The Pentagon, as you saw there, just held its briefing with the latest on the situation in Afghanistan. Our political director, Rick Klein, joining us. Also, our producer, reporter there from the Pentagon, Louis Martinez, who made a quick hop inside the briefing there to get to us here on ABC News Live. Why don't we go ahead and start with you, Louis, with just the latest information. I think one thing that caught all of our attention is finding out now that there was not a second explosion yesterday. Could you clarify what exactly happened and what the general and also John Kirby had to say about that?
Right. What they were talking about was that in the fog of war, that's a term that we hear constantly, that initial reports are maybe not always correct. This is proof of that. Yesterday, all day, we were hearing that there were 2 suicide bombers, one at the Abbey Gate who caused all of that destruction and all the fatalities, and another one at the nearby Barron Hotel, which is about 200 yards away. But we got very faint information about what was going on at that area. Well, at the top of this briefing, right there, General Taylor essentially saying we now have to correct ourselves because we are now learning that there was only one attacker, one suicide bomb attacker, and that was at the main gate. And he explained that the information was coming in, and now that they have better information, and so they've been able to clarify that. But again, it goes to the whole point of how was one individual able to create such havoc and such devastation there. They also clarified that there were more than one gunman, it appears. Yesterday, General McKenzie from CENTCOM told reporters that there was gunfire, that it was believed that some gunmen also fired into the crowd. Today, General Taylor said they are still investigating that. They know of at least one position that was aiming at the crowd, but they're unaware of what happened to that individual and if whether there were, in fact, others and what happened to them. So much still remains to be determined, and the investigation continues. You heard there John Kirby at the end talk about there's going to be a review, not going to be called a criminal investigation, as the one reporter had phrased his question, but what they are going to do is try to understand what happened there so that in the future this doesn't happen again. But General Taylor is saying that already those commanders on the ground are implementing changes that have taken place as a result of yesterday's attack, and so therefore in a better way to try to protect their forces. Another thing that has happened is that they confirmed that, yes, the Taliban has put into effect some of the requests that were made for them to improve security around the airport. And we're also learning that as flights continue until the very last day, as we heard from John Kirby, the thing that's going to happen is that they're not going to tell us how many more troops there are inside the airport. He said that today there are 5,000, and between now and next Tuesday, which is the drawdown date of August 31st, they're no longer going to give us any more updates about how many troops there are in the ground, but they will be able to secure the airport up until then and continue to evacuate any people that need to do so. Already 5,000 people still there at the airport awaiting flights, Kara.
And the general, of course, calling that a noble mission as U.S. forces continue to try to get everybody out of there, minus any more death, destruction, explosions. I heard a number of you asking also to the general and John Kirby about how the president of the United States came forward yesterday and said, we will hunt you down, those that are responsible for killing innocent Afghans and U.S. personnel. We are coming after you. In light of that and what's going on and just trying to keep these evacuations going, there is a massive hunt on for these killers. How could that look, Louis? I mean, we're well aware of an air campaign that could happen with strike fighters and gunships. Is that more than likely what it would look like? Because I know there is that ongoing mission to hunt them down, those who killed innocent people yesterday, in addition to getting those out through evacuation flights. Could this be something like, I think of Tora Bora? You'll remember the air campaign there when they got intel about Osama bin Laden in the caves, and the next thing you knew, there was this massive air campaign blowing up caves looking for those terrorists. Is this the type of scenario we could see in Afghanistan once again, if indeed they get good intel on where these ISIS-K fighters are hiding out?
It's unclear, and you heard both Secretary Kirby and General Taylor be very, very vague about that, because I think, Kira, everything you listed is probably under consideration. But things have to happen, right? They have to gather the intelligence. They have to figure out who may have ordered this, who may have been behind this. They may have been trying to figure out going after the supply networks. How did they get the materials to make this devastating bomb? There are additional threats that they're concerned about, the potential for car bombs that General McKenzie talked about yesterday. Those are still valid and concerns that the military has for the security situation there outside the airport. I've got to tell you that one of the things that we have been hearing about here at the Pentagon for months, as the United States military was drawing down the 2,500 American troops that they were going to have there, was that the American military and the United States was going to be able to retain what they call their over-the-horizon counterterrorism strike ability. What does that mean? That means if they were able to target or find terror networks that were planning attacks against the United States, they would be able to target them from over the horizon, not necessarily from inside the country anymore, but from other bases outside. Typically, that means drones. Typically, that means aircraft. Typically, everything that you listed there. It means maintaining intelligence from overhead, satellites, maybe even spy planes. But the whole point being gathering intelligence and monitoring these terror groups planning attacks against the U.S. and then having the capability to strike from afar. After August 31st, the United States is no longer going to be inside Afghanistan, according to the president's timetable. So we are going to see now this attack against the Marines and the sailor and this Army personnel yesterday. That is going to be the first example of this over-the-horizon counterterrorism ability that President Biden has been talking about. Obviously, when he was talking about this, he was talking about threats against Americans in the homeland. But now he's responding in quick order to a threat that killed Americans inside Afghanistan.
And Rick, no doubt, this is not just a major crisis for the Biden administration, but it's a test. And he came forward last night before the nation, at times got emotional, but also made it very clear that that message to these ISIS terrorists: we will hunt you down, we will find you, we will come after you, you will pay the price. How did the president do last night?
Yeah, there were three things that struck me. One is the raw emotion, talking about the father of someone who served, his late son, Beau Biden, having served overseas in a military capacity. Second, I think that line about "we will hunt you down," the determination he's showing now to say that we will be relentless, as Louis said, in the war on terrorism, regardless of the troop presence and the lack thereof in Afghanistan. The third thing I think that stood out to me, Kira, was when he said that the word of the United States matters, because I think that cuts in two directions. He meant it as a line to ensure American allies in Afghanistan and beyond that the U.S. will have your back, that Americans and Afghan allies of the American effort there over 20 years will be evacuated to the extent possible. That mission is the mission that he now thinks of front and center. But the broader point about the U.S. word mattering is something that will reverberate on the world stage in Afghanistan and well beyond. Other countries are almost certain to fill the void, and any country that is dealing with the United States has to now know about this track record of what happened in Afghanistan and this devastating and catastrophic end stage to America's longest war. I think that's part of the legacy that President Biden will be establishing for himself and for the country on the world stage.
And Rick, not only does the Biden administration have what's happening inside Afghanistan, but now we have thousands of refugees coming into our country. And as you heard, and we saw the pictures at Dulles Airport, just the influx of these refugees on aircraft and trying to get into shelters. I even talked to a friend there just outside of Dulles Airport, where she saw the long lines around the corner where many of these evacuees were coming in for shelter. The president not only has a crisis overseas that he has to deal with, but here in the United States, it's going to be a test to see how he handles the humanitarian crisis and also the future for all these evacuees that we need to take care of, we are responsible for.
this does not end August 31st, and is mind-blowingly difficult as the logistics and the technical and bureaucratic aspects of trying to evacuate U.S. citizens and Afghan allies over the next 4 or 5 days are now, given this terrorist threat made even exponentially more difficult. You do have the huge challenge of processing and dealing with trying to get people out of the country after August 31st, when the U.S. no longer has a troop presence of any significance there, trying to work with a Taliban government that for 2 decades has been our enemy, and that now appears to have major enemies, including the supposed ISIS-K elements who were behind yesterday's horrific attack. You have then terrorists fighting with insurgents. The ISIS-K elements hate the Taliban. They also hate the United States. And so to rely on that security situation there, as well as the efforts back home to process and to try to make sure you're not releasing people with unsavory paths, liars or criminals or potential terrorists, as some have been warning, into the general U.S. population, it is a huge, huge task. And to the point of the White House, President Biden will say this would have happened at any point, whether the withdrawal was now or a year from now or 10 years ago. You'd be dealing with this messy end stage. But the fact is that it's real and relevant right now, in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, in the middle of economic concerns and all the other domestic crises that the president is now facing. You do have this huge issue of refugees and would-be refugees, with the acknowledgement that it's almost certain that there will be Americans and Afghan allies who are left behind after the 31st.
Rick Klein, Louis Martinez, thank you both so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.